like this. Okay. So Gamma, we're recording the conversation, so you're also aware of what Daniel is doing.
Yeah,
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, no, thank you for thinking of me. It's a lot of fun. You know, I think for me, biomimicry lives in like I'm very busy doing many different projects, and biomimicry is like the thread that ties them all together, right? It's all an attempt to kind of weave ecosystems and communities and culture back together. So, for example, one of the exciting projects we're working on right now is in really a field called what we're calling here in Hawaii, Indigenous innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we draw on cultural practices, land-based practices, traditional ecological knowledge, and the genius of our biomes, which was a source of knowledge for all indigenous communities, but design innovations, creating a process very similar, kind of parallel to biomimicry, maybe inclusive of biomimicry too, that helps us turn some of those insights and practices and knowledge into things that are relevant in a contemporary context. So we talk a lot about the sort of watershed land management based practices of the native Hawaiians. It's called a system called Ahupua'a. And we talk about what is the modern day equivalent of Ahupua'a. We no longer have the exact same objectives in terms of our human desires and the economic needs, but we still have largely the same ecological requirements, but we're not meeting them, right? We're destroying our ecosystem. So it's kind of like this thing, you know, Janine often talks about like factory as a forest, right? Or city as a forest. But here in Hawaii, we don't just think about, you know, our forest is this ahupua'a, this valley, this very short watershed system, which is really interesting, right? Because in Hawaii, we can see a lot of the work I do orients around this notion of genius of place. Because in Hawaii, right, I can see out my window to the far end of the watershed, right? The clouds raining on top of the mountain. And I can look just over here and I see the end of the watershed, the ocean, where that water goes.
Yeah.
So everything is in one field of view, kind of like a condensed, you know, I think Hawaii has like 90% of the world's major biomes are present here in Hawaii. So
everything together, all packed.
Yeah, all packed together because we have a very high elevation on Mokuokeawe, the big island, Hawaii Island. So you have pretty much landscape that is totally like a frozen tundra on top of those mountains. Although we have some spaces that are very desert-like because the orographic effect prevents the rain from reaching the predominant trade winds. The mountains gather the clouds, but the leeward side of the mountains remains relatively dry. So we have all these really interesting ecotones, all these really interesting overlapping ecosystems, but it's all like, you can see them all from one position.
Yeah, Hawaii is a big ecotone, actually.
Yeah. In some ways it's, you know, they invented the biosphere too, you know, in Arizona. But Hawaii is sort of really like a biosphere too. Like it's the whole world condensed into one. And islands tend to do that. But
yeah, when I was living in El Cuyo, it is not an island, but it was a semi-island because it was very like packed like this. And my sensation is that everyone was happening. We didn't have mountains. Of course, it was just a coastal dune, and then you have the salty rivers, so the wetlands. And then the afterwards, then you had the jungle. But my sensation was that everything was happening in a small scale.
That's right.
So you could see you could be in touch with the sea, with the salty river. You could see everything, and it was very impressive because also in terms of population, it was kind of making an experiment. So I was intervening artistically the community also towards nature. And when I was doing this kind of work, but in a different scale, I felt that I've been trained to do it because of this like close scale that you are working in, like this like enclosed universe that you are working in. And this rings me a bell a lot with what you are saying. And also in regeneration, I've been invited last year to the Capital Institute Regenerative Communities Network, and they happen to be in Mexico, and I was there. Usually I'm half and half. Now I'm more in Belgium, but they taught me about the watershed management. So it seems that all regeneration is moving towards watershed.
Yeah.
And I think this is a very interesting concept that we should explore during the Ecotone, like deeper.
Yeah.
Because watershed is the thread of life. And I mean, for me, it has been always obvious, but I don't know why we haven't talked about it like this.
Yeah.
Because we are focusing, for example, the genius of place. We are focusing on species, even in ecosystems. But we never say that, we never state like water is the key stuff.
Yeah.
And that is what unites us all. So even, have you seen Virtual Gaia?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Virtual Gaia, we even ask for putting all the rivers there.
Oh, I love it.
And so we can see the vessels of the planet. So it is very interesting. And so you are with indigenous knowledge. And last time in our conversation with Melina, she has been also working with Amazonian people as I did at some point, and with Mayans as well. So Gamma is African, and like we're trying to also bring this perspective. Like it is a full open perspective. So really, what you feel to say, this is a safe space for you to talk about it. It is not just about science, but it is about what we know. It is about what we have experienced. And I want you to feel like in this space. So one of the things could be this one. I don't know if you have something else. I remember that you put something in Seven Vortex on National Geographic as well. Like you've been part of this program.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you are specifically interested in showing there? Like usually is 1 hour of a conversation in between the three of us. In the first 20 minutes of this 1 hour, you have, well, if you want more, if you want less, but this is kind of the format that it has been working. So you present something, we present each other, and then you go and you go with your own presentation. And you present, for example, Claire was presenting the work in biomimicry South Africa. So for her, was more about biomimicry South Africa and about the learning biomimicry project that she's launching. For Melina, was more about presenting biomimicry life principles, but more in her own perspective because she's a biologist. What is your I know that you're in education. You are not biologist, right?
No. My original training was in neuroscience. So in my like undergraduate studies, so a lot of biology, sort of cognitive neuroscience. So a lot of psychology, a lot of neurobiology in particular. But and interesting. I always finding interesting applications of like the human mind, it being one of the ultimate examples of what happens when nature is designing. It's a really, really complex, sophisticated, beautiful, emergent experience. But yeah, I think for me, my main project is called Pacific Blue Studios, and it ties a lot of these concepts like indigenous innovation. Actually, interesting that we Pacific Blue Studios is essentially an education initiative to transform our watersheds into our classrooms and our schools. So we even use the Hawaiian word for water is Wai, W-A-I. And the Hawaiian word for wealth, or the Hawaiian word for abundance, is Vai Vai. So just water. And so we talk about designing our learning ecosystem around Vai. And so we even came up with an acronym, Wonder, Adventure, Innovate. And we use that acronym to sort of guide our explorations and actions. And then we focus a lot on what we call designing for collective intelligence. So how can we, instead of, education traditionally is oriented around maximizing individual performance. But we want to optimize individual contributions and reciprocity, design for reciprocity, so that we can understand collective intelligence and get back to this concept of shared abundance. So it's really kind of a big social experiment, and we incorporate the genius of place concept, and we incorporate indigenous innovation concept. We do a lot of biocultural conservation work. So maintaining ecosystems and trying to heal and restore ecosystems, but doing it as a laboratory for futures thinking. So we don't just want to protect what used to be here in Hawaii, but we want to think about what will need to be here in Hawaii in the future, and how can we fit in again with nature, because if genius of places doesn't include us, then we're going to be in trouble. So how are we a part of the genius of places?
And I think one of the big issues that I see globally is that most of the people think that working with indigenous knowledge is getting back in time. And this idea of whoever is living by now, sharing the present, we're all equally evolved. And we have all survived until now. So I would like to touch on this in many ways, because this is super important, and how this could shape our future if we pay attention to what is there. Because what I'm seeing is that we are touching just on science in general, like in the Western world, as we know the dominance is there. And the system is pricing violence as the first place. But what about the ethos? Like in the VPROs, we talk a lot about the ethos. And then when I see indigenous communities, I see that the ethos is embedded. They don't even really, they talk about it, but it is really on the culture of sharing, reciprocity. Of course, there are always people that are not completely all right, as everywhere, right? I'm not saying that they are saints, but ethos, and then the idea of not getting back. So I cannot live as an indigenous people anymore myself, but I can do the best to live in harmony with nature. And I think this should be our goal, and the whole knowledge in human species takes both, or takes everyone, not even both, because it seems like we are making polarities, but takes everyone just to gather the collective intelligence. And this is, as you know, the purpose of Seven Vortex, just trying to connect this both sides of the knowledge. And I've been having troubles actually, because in the Western world they get it less, because they need something that it looks more like a database. And if it's not like a database, then they don't know what to do with that. But if it's just enhancing a narrative that helps you do that, then I've seen, for example, a guy from New Zealand, Maori, and he did he did a vortex about the indigenous culture. It was a crystal, like a diamond.
I love it. Yeah.
And I said, this is why, they are so imbalanced.
Imbalance. That's it. I think that's I think it's interesting, right? In so many indigenous communities that were thrown out of balance, but through the revitalization of their culture, are rediscovering balance, even in a new context. And I think that, still there are people, of course, there are people who don't follow the cultural norms of their communities and maybe do things that are, that are violent or are not expressing the deepest values. But there are also people who have just been separated from those values. And so, coming back to them is scary. Sharing of stories and sharing of knowledge, they're concerned about being misrepresented or taken advantage of. It happens a lot here in Hawaii and other parts of the world. But I learned two lessons early on in Hawaii that were really helpful. One was a friend who said, you're not Hawaiian in your blood, you're Hawaiian in your piko. And you actually have three picos, but basically in the Hawaiian cultural tradition, you have three picos, and one is where you came from. It's from your ancestors, and it's here in your head. One is where you are presently, and that's in your belly button, where you were connected to your mother. And then there's your, reproductive organs. This is your pico to the future. And they said, you're Hawaiian because if you can see the connection and relationship between where you have come from and where you are going. And that applies to everyone. So even if you are disconnected from the place that your ancestors were from, you maintain a connection because you understand the thread. You understand this pico and the pico in your stomach and you can see, project into the future as well, where you need to go. And it's this idea of wayfinding, navigation, right? And I spend a lot of time with Polynesian Voyaging Society and the canoes, and we're preparing for an upcoming voyage around the Pacific, which is really exciting because the ocean is where I get a lot of my inspiration and pay a lot of attention metaphorically and literally to the ocean. And then the second lesson was someone said, I'd rather have, a lot of people in Hawaii are learning to speak Hawaiian again, Olelo Hawaii, the indigenous language. But I have a Hawaiian friend who said, I'd rather have a bunch of people who could speak English but think Hawaiian than I would rather have people who can speak Hawaiian but still think English. Like they're still thinking in Western paradigms, but they've learned the old words. And because a lot of people, hula, a lot of these, like you talked about, it's not just about restoring the past, right? It's really about, we want people who can operate in the modern world, the contemporary context, be future thinkers, but actually be rooted in Hawaiian values and in place-based values and rooted and connected to nature and understanding where they come from. You can speak, it's good practice to restore lost languages,
of course,
diversity of languages. But I think we want people who really can communicate in the contemporary context and do it understanding where all of this has come from. And I think that's those two lessons. I said, because I was really like, man, I'm having a hard time learning Hawaiian. I've been studying a little bit of Olelo Hawaii and trying to pick it up. And
were you born in Hawaii or not?
No, born in California, and have, my roots are mostly, on my grandmother's side, I have, Hispanic, Mexican American, Latino roots. And then on my other three grandparents are all mostly European, kind of Western European roots. And then a mix of a few other things, but predominantly those are my roots. But I was living here, just like when I lived in China, I want to learn Chinese. I say, I come to Hawaii, be disrespectful not to learn some.
Yeah, of course.
And so
you're more global.
Yeah, I'm going to try to learn. And it was hard, I'm getting older. So language learning is slowing down, but but my friend said, he goes, look around you. How many Native Hawaiians do you see out here in the taro fields helping to restore the lo'i? How many Native Hawaiians do you see moving the rocks to repair the rock wall? And there weren't many, right? He goes, we don't need more people of a certain blood type and DNA speaking a certain language. We need people who are willing to do the work and are willing to think like you and who want to find creative solutions to our problems the same way our ancestors did, right? Yeah. So that helped us survive. Like you said, we all survived to get here. And so I think that was a really, of course, we want more Native Hawaiians enjoying the work of both protecting the land, but also innovating into the future. That's definitely a big need. Indigenous communities need to be amplified and elevated. But I think there's also, there's also a need for like you said, all of us have to come into this space of being connected to
It
nature.
feels almost like we should turn to the space that we live and try to add value to that space. Because if we don't do that, then we are not really adding value to the planet. And the other conversation that comes to my mind like this is, what is our ecological niche as human species?
Yeah, I love that.
So we really need to think about, as a species, to think about how to add value. Okay, create conditions conducive to life. Sounds like nice and sounds like something that we have empathy with. But how does that translate into my everyday life? And I think this is what you are saying, like just trying to add value and trying to bring harmony back and trying to plant things, to respect water, to restore watersheds. And it doesn't matter where you are. And now I'm in Belgium and I have this big problem in between, like I'm Colombian Mexican. So I already have this kind of mix. I didn't know that it was bicultural, but yes, I am bicultural by that. But now I got married with a Belgian girl, and my kids are like both sides as well. So I say, well, if I have to define myself, I have to pick a side at some point. And there is no point anymore, because if I'm in Belgium, then I should be always adding value to the place that I live, whether it's France, UK, Mexico, Colombia, wherever. And I think we all need from each other. That will be a great way to do it. Something else, for example, in ecosystems, I've been working a lot with energy exchanges, and as a way of understanding networks in nature. And today I was also watching a video from Merlin Sheldrake. I don't know if you know him. Well, you have read Sheldrake, but we have Rupert Sheldrake, but this is the son. And the son is working on mushrooms and fungi. So he's also talking about these exchanges, like bio-network relationships and tangible or not tangible. But it will be interesting also to see how from neuroscience it works, and then to touch in how it's being used for technology, at least for me, because I don't think we are making good use of what we know for something. And this is very frustrating, because on my own, I'm not a developer or whatever, but I saw this gap, and I think we need to attack it, because otherwise we are not part of the conversation. So digital biomimicry seems to me very relevant. And not because I don't like to be in nature, but because digital realm is shaping our world. And if we don't participate in this conversation, it seems to me the same kind of thing that not participating in my local space. So I don't know if we can touch a little bit on that. So we can, with your neuroscience background, maybe, well, you are trained for AI, I presume,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a super interesting question, and we do some work through Pacific Blue Studios with a project called Aloha AI. And we bring up this sort of networked question a lot, because most of our technology is still, even when we do design technology that's sort of modular, and could be decentralized and distributed and still harness knowledge in interesting ways. We tend to sort of silo things and decentralize things. It's become the way that we've been taught to live, and even the way that we perceive our brains, right? I mean, most of the conversation around the structure of the human brain, even until now, is really about looking at the ways that very specific brain forms are contributing to unique brain function. And it's actually I mean, we use fMRI, which was a technology that was coming into use when I was a student, to really understand sort of the spatial energy demands that the brain is making. But when we visualize it, instead of visualizing the full energetic exchange that's happening across the network, we look where it's most predominant. So, and then we basically gray out everything else in our visualizations. But actually the whole brain is loaded with electricity and energy exchange, right? Every neuron in the network is participating. Now, there are certain concentrations of neurons in certain areas, and that's interesting scientifically, right? It's important to acknowledge. But when
Maybe it's also easier to measure.
it's easier to measure, right? And it's an erasure. It's just like it's just like the state of Georgia is doing to Black voters right now. It's a way to say, like, well, if we can't hear them say that they're being oppressed, then we don't have to think about them.
Yeah.
And erasure is something that's become very predominant. And I think that's, for me, the power in networks is when we start to acknowledge even the small contributions and inputs and outputs that are, it's like with our economy, right? We only take a single measure like GDP and, oh, it's success. But actually there are all these little nuanced micro exchanges happening at the edges of an economy that are having real significant impacts when you add them up. And we're not capturing those because our technologies are not designed, and our infrastructure and our systems are not designed to understand that complexity. But I think it's,
is there any way that and to so I was reading about navigation systems on birds, for example, and they are related to the magnetic field of the planet.
Yeah.
So I'm just betting, but there should be something in the brain and in our body that is connected with this magnetic field, like the torus, like the energy fields that we have. It is aligned with the torus of the planet. Is there something that you can also have information in between that? Because I'm having troubles, and that would be super helpful for me if we can touch on how the Earth is actually all connected, but it works as a metabolism.
Yeah.
And I think when you go into navigation, you have better idea of that, because also looking just on the Earth, it gives you just one side of the perspective. But if you go more into the sea, then you have another side that is not always common in not even in biomimics, right? And I think having this couple of perspectives could be super enriching if navigation, energetic fields, and these kind of things could if you can bring some insight, maybe not exactly for now, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm going to think more about that. And I do think that that's a cool link that you're drawing, in navigation, in traditional Polynesian wayfinding. There's a lot of interesting things related to that, right? One, the navigator doesn't point the canoe in the direction of an island that's far away and try to sail to it. Mm-hmm. They actually look at the signs, imagine the form of the island, and pull the island to them. So the language and the story is that I'm actually pulling, I'm pulling an island to me. So there's an energetic exchange, right, that's happening. And the way that they tune into that, the way that happens on Hokulea with the navigators is really interesting, because one, our master navigators say they take in anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000 relevant data points a day. While this is what they have to process. And those things could be, there's usually 4, 5, or 6 kind of prevailing swells, ocean swells. So they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I decipher the patterns that are moving under the boat, and understand, that could signal that there's an island chain, because we anticipate that if the wind's blowing in this direction, but the swell is coming this way, there must be some refraction or some deflection or something happening to those waves. And then, of course, they're also looking at the stars, and they're navigating by sun and the stars, and they're paying attention to all of those angles and positionalities in the sky. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, they're crossing a vast ocean, sometimes over 1,000 miles, and they have to hit this tiny point on a map, and they go, I can't tell you what I looked at. I can't tell you what data point I received. I can only tell you what I felt in my gut. right? So there's some sort of energetic field that they are, especially if they're going to be successful more than chance would allow, right? Which they are. They're successful at a far greater rate than chance would allow. They're tuning into something that's either it's just so complex and so combinatorial that they can't actually explain the single thing that they looked at, or there's just some other really interesting, I mean, they look at the color of the clouds, the shape of the clouds, they look at reflections off the surface of the ocean, they're looking at birds, they're looking at marine life. All of these different things are sort of coming into, obviously wind direction, they're coming into their mind, and they're having to keep track of that whole path that they're on, because they have to be able to find their way home as well. So they have to remember, how long were we sailing in this direction and at what speed, and how long were we sailing in this direction, what speed, and where are we now in relationship to where we started? Where are we now in relationship to the island that we're pulling from the sea? So it's really a sophisticated story that none of our current technologies can even come close to, you know. That's
or which is even worse, like we go and we analyze the pigeons as if they know where to navigate because they have iron on the peak, and that's it, right? Like they're so stupid that they can just navigate with one thing, and that is why. And man, this is just crazy, because we have this Kogi. I went with the Kogis in Colombia, which are the you know, in the center of the universe, as they call the heart of the universe. And this guy that I met, he knew about the stars that they saw in the observatory in UK, and he named it with these guys in UK just having this hyper telescope. The documentary is called La Luna, but I met him just by chance by being there. And my daughter is a Luna, so we've ended up by staying at his place in this adventure of a Luna, right? 2 years ago. And it's so impressive because they've been trained to be in the darkness for about 9 years, 9 cycles, at least that's how they call it. I don't know if they're exactly 9 years, but they develop senses in such a different way. And it seems to me that we are shutting down our senses in so many ways and plugging us into the screen for some other things, but even not even using technology for enhancing something that could be useful for us. So I think, well, somehow we have covered the conversation. I'm okay. So we have also more things to share, and not to be so repetitive in our own conversation there. So to be spontaneous and to go with our instinct. So just feel completely free, and I think that is the purpose, and to share with other biomimics like a nice and deep conversation that doesn't have to be one way or the other. There are a couple of things that I need help from your side. Sure. So the first one, it is, could you please fulfill the height? We can do it now if you want, so it is done. If you share the screen, it's biomimicry.com, but biomimicry with K. Let's see. So I help you, and then you don't spend time figuring out, because it looks like I'm not as good as I thought for developing things.
Yeah, right. Oh man. All right, I think I got that's right. Is that it?
Yeah. So you have to press 1 second. It's not 1 click, but 1 second click. And you just close that one, please. And we will do it just one at a time. On the right-hand side, bottom, top right-hand side, there is a cross. Yeah, so you just close it, please. Yeah, so if you click on the center one for 1 second, so there you can take a picture, you put your name and you take a picture, or you put a picture as you wish.
Oh, I see. So,
but you also have to put your name.
How's that?
Is it working? Yeah, perfect.
I think so.
So then, okay. Okay, on the bottom of the like below your picture, yeah, that one. Okay.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so you are there already. And so cohort starting, and then it's kind of a survey, but I thought that making something fractal, it was going to give me more insights in the future.
Yeah, nice.
And I don't know, right? Like it's just an
Cool.
intuition on the shape. I'm more visual than. So in biomimicry network, I don't know if there is if you are part of biomimicry Hawaii or something like this, but the reef you are, I think.
Yeah.
In nature you might be, Seven Vortex you are, and if you are part of a global network or another one that you want to mention there. Okay.
I'm not. I should be.
Okay.
There we go.
And then biomimicry strategies. It is kind of your preferred strategies from biology. For example, in my case is, I don't know, evolution or bioluminescence or something like this.
Let's see. Can be very general.
Yeah, just one word and just like this. Yeah, exactly. And some people have put also life principles, and that's also right. Yeah, and you can put just two. You don't have to put three or whatever you feel like.
I can come back to this, yeah, and continue filling
if you didn't send it, but I will show you like yeah, don't send it, but then by Mimicry Solutions, let's go through all the hexagons, and before you send it, you change it whenever you want. So this is, for example, I don't know, the cement that you were talking
to.
Yeah. So you can put okay there, and if you have something else, or yeah, you prefer.
Do you know Pedro and Bruno Rootman, Brazilian brothers?
No.
They came up with Nucleario.
This is project as well, helping them. They won also the design challenge. No?
That's right. Yeah.
Discipline focus. I don't know. Like you can put another, and then education or.
Yeah, I'll put education.
And then okay.
Business too. Okay.
And then biomimicry training. I bet. Well, you're a B Pro, but I don't know if you have also the masters and and something else.
That's good. Yeah.
So okay. So as you could see now, the send button it is on the bottom right, but don't click it.
Okay.
If you want to add something else, then don't click it. If it's okay like this, then you can just send it. For me,
this is good.
It's okay. So that's done. And this is the one that I'm gonna use in the email just to say something, just to put your image. And the other thing that I would like, if you can send me maybe a description or a paragraph, I can also write it, but English is not my native language. So since it's yours, then I would like you to give me just one paragraph so we can put it there. And this will be in the newsletter as well. So I will send it to Lex, and Lex will put it into the newsletter. So it's like 2 sentences there and 1 paragraph in the email. I can usually what I do is I send the paragraph, and then Lex takes whatever she wants and make the sentence. So if you can send me the 1 paragraph, so we have the the same picture maybe, but in the attachment, so she can use it into the email.
Great. No, I'll send that to you. It's just like a kind of like a bio, or like a paragraph about the work I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is for inviting people to come to the show, knowing from you. I can show you an example if you want.
Sure.
Let me just pull it. So, have you seen this one?
Oh, wow. Cool.
These are all the biomimics.
That's awesome.
The B pros and everyone. So you're around here. So let me put the MailChimp so you have an idea. So we have about 200 contacts, or usually in the show there are about 20, 40, and then we send something. Let me see if we have it here. So we're learning by doing. So usually I put something like this. So I don't know, in your case, if you have a word or traditional ecological knowledge, something that you want, you can tell me this is Melina, and I put one paragraph about Melina, and then we put like in each we do 1 hour and then 30 minutes of open mic. So whoever wants to join and say something else or ask questions, it's open. Cool. We have the nuggets of 7 minutes, and the whole conversation is going to be posted in the reef. The idea is to create symbiosis with the reef and try to bring people in the reef, because it is kind of dead. So in every case, we put the name and the organization. So Pacific Blue Studio might be around here. So this is a good opportunity for you to showcase. But that will be in the next one. So right now we put whatever it was until the episode 5. And this will be your part. So this is the thing that I need for you to give me. I will use this one, but usually Lex doesn't use this one. She wants another picture, so it's fine. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's perfect.
If you want to be there like 5 minutes beforehand, because I think we have done this session, and usually you have received already the appointment.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's already in your agenda, and I will send it, let's say, at the end of this week, the invitation. So if you can send it today or tomorrow, the text. So as more time as we have, as more people usually is there, and I also posted in Facebook or in Twitter, and then feel free to invite whoever you want. Like, it is open, but it is not about explaining the basics of biomimicry. It is really deeper level of conversation, so we can. My feeling is that we need to move the conversation forward. If we keep talking about biomimicry, like this conversation that we had, this is perfect.
Yeah.
If we stayed always in explaining what biomimicry is, then I feel frustrated.
Yeah.
So I need more conversation like this, and shaping the wind, and just feeling, following my guts as well, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is, and I think many people, even if they aren't, biomimicry professionals, I think the content is more valuable. I think they get the general idea pretty quickly, but we often want to run people through like a whole course. Like, you have to take a master's program before you can have a real creative conversation.
To be topic centered, which is you need them to understand biomimicry before they understand nature. Yeah. And my feeling is we are all there because we are nature lovers.
Yeah.
And biomimicry, whether it exists or not, I'm glad that it exists. But this is not what we are up to. It is really, we are up to nature. So I think by jumping skipping this conversation, and we all have the same basics. So I asked Dana, like, who is the best for ethos in between the Vipros? So give me just one recommendation. And she said, like, all the Vipros are perfect for ethos. So well, that was a perfect answer. So thank you. But so we don't have to share this part. We can move on, and we can cross-pollinate in between cohorts. So yeah, perfect.
I love it. Awesome.
And if you have someone to propose, let me know. If you see someone that could be perfect fit for this, then I'm super happy to invite it, because now my cohort is getting like scarce, right? So
do you know, Hugo, you were 2015, 2014?
Yeah, 2011, 2013, the second
you're
cohort.
Like the second one. Do you know Billy Allman?
No, but Gamma told me, mentioned him last time.
Yeah, you guys should have Billy on too. That would be fun. So if you need, cool. If Gamma already knows him, they can connect. But if you need an introduction,
no, please connect me. Yeah. Introduce me, and then I will invite him to the next one. Well, to the next one on the road. Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Aloha.